Health Talk on WYSL AM 1040, FM 92.1, and FM 95.5 West.
Welcome back to Health Talk on the WYSL stations, FM 92.1, the new FM 95.5 West. If you're out in Spencerport, Brockport, Hamlin, Hilton, and those environs, as well as News Power 1040 AM WYSL. Thanks so much for joining us. Bob Savage, Paul Sussman from the Center for Cosmetic Dentistry, and the lovely Mrs. J. Savage is in the studio with us after a hiatus of, what's it been, about 6 months?
I think so. I'm in the Hermione seat.
Yeah, you are. She's just
because I have a lot of questions. He's like, baby, stop with the questions. Here, come, ask.
It's a good thing. Strong for Life. Up next, Liesl Schoonraad is in the USA on a special visa, speaking about prevention of bullying, talking to veterans. She's a sports psychologist. I'll tell you, after J.C. DeLass has played golf, we could use a sports psychologist around here. A little frustration going there. Also a trauma counselor, and she's worked with police services in her native South Africa. Liesl, thanks so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
So how badly did I butcher your last name?
Not too bad. I've heard worse.
Schoonraad? Is that
Schoonraad.
That's not even close, but say it again.
Schoonraad.
If I try to...
It's very Russian because of the...
Yes, I know. Russian. I was thinking it sounded very Russian.
If I try to pronounce that, it's going to come out Squidward.
That's fine. As long as you look at me, I know you're talking to me, so it's all good.
Right. I'm just going to call you Liesl. I don't think I can do too much damage to that.
Can I just ask ahead if you will be my friend? Because the Avengers is coming out, but they have nothing on you. With the planes and the trucks and the tires. This woman, I want to be your friend.
You can be my friend anytime.
She's so strong.
Well, on that note, I'm just going to let Jay lead off with this interview.
No, I watched all these videos. I was like, are you kidding me?
You're way better prepared than I am. I haven't watched any videos.
The Army's like, can you fly in and then pull the plane? Yeah, I got it. No problem. Mark the spot. And the next day, yeah, I got this one too.
So,
yep.
All right, so you wear all these hats. You're the trauma counselor, you're the sports psychologist, and you talk about bullying and all these other varied topics. And somehow you landed on the shores of the United States. How did that happen?
Well, I met someone last year who has a company called Hope, and just the name of the company itself being Hope, and working in the schools in South Africa for the past 7-8 years now, with the high suicide rates, which is something no one wants to speak about. And, my thing is always telling people there's always hope, no matter what the situation, there's always an answer, there's always something to work towards to get to a better space. So immediately the name grabbed me. And yes, here I am. I mean, it's been quite the process to get here for the to do the work while I'm here. But I think if something's meant to be, it happens. It just falls into place. So
school suicide is not unique to the United States?
Oh no, depression is not unique to any country. I mean, it's a global problem, disease, and it's definitely not something that's just in South African schools.
Okay, so you have experience with veterans and you have experience with suicide prevention. So there's been a highly publicized epidemic of veteran suicides in the U.S. What are your thoughts on that? Well,
we actually met with a veteran last week, and it's what was interesting, what he was sharing with me, that most of the veterans, the 22 per day that they're talking about, are 50 and older. So it seems that it is something that gets packed away. And I mean, that's typical of any trauma. You put it away. It's not something you want to deal with. You don't know how to deal with it. So you kind of put it aside, and I'll deal with it eventually. So when these men and women get to a retirement age and suddenly their minds and their lives become slower and not as occupied, these things are still there, and it comes back. Exactly. And then it's... Now it becomes a reality once again. So that was quite interesting what he was sharing with me. But, I know with trauma, and it doesn't matter what type of trauma you've been through, you kind of put it away. It's not something... you immediately think of, I'm needing help with this. You know, you're just so trying to cope and get through the process that you don't always reach out. And I think specifically for veterans and troops, they're superheroes in my eyes. I think I might have more respect for the troops than some Americans, sadly, but they are superheroes. I mean, who puts their lives out to say, I'm willing to put my life out to protect my country and the people? And they have this mindset of, I'm a superhero, and a superhero doesn't fall apart. A superhero can deal with anything. So there's that I'm still human thing. So, and that is what I think the line is that they struggle with, is I'm still human, but I'm the superhero. I can do this. Maybe tomorrow I'll do better. So they just keep going without reaching out. And by the time they reach out, it's too late.
So all the problems have been suppressed. They're all lurking in the background, and they become, at least from one viewpoint, would be insurmountable, Jay.
Well, and also training, right? They train them to, focus on the task, do the next thing. Then they don't say, okay, and then... Yes. And then, okay, you can take time for yourself to let down that emotion that you just saw horrific things.
Exactly.
Your friend and people you love, and you're far, far away from your family. And
absolutely. And I've seen similar things with the police in South Africa. I think the crime and the violence in South Africa is a lot worse than it is in the States. So I've had a lot of the South African policemen that actually came to me for debriefing after they had a very bad shift, because they preferred not to go to the police psychologist for various reasons. So they would come to me, they'd just do the, are you home for coffee? But I knew what it meant. But it's the trauma, once again, of what you've experienced and having to go back into a normal life. You can't. It's not possible.
And we were talking about yesterday, boots on the ground at home. Like you're saying, same thing. So the cops, they're protecting. Okay, so they're not overseas, they're here. Again, freedom fighters for us, protecting us and our freedoms and things. And then they have to back it up and go home and put the smile face on.
I've also seen, when I was here for a few weeks, the end of last year. And I think the average American grows up way more protected, for example, that we do in South Africa. In South Africa, watch you back from birth. Because of the crime rate, you're constantly on high alert. But I think the average American grows up very protected, and then to be taken from that protected environment and being thrown into such a violent space, and being taken out of that and brought back to that protected space and saying, okay, now continue with your life. That is from one contrast to absolute other, back to where you started. And to find that balance between the contrasts, you leave here and maybe you've got a small child of 3 and they throw a tantrum about not getting a Barbie yogurt, and you go to a war zone and you see what you see and you experience what you experience, and you come back and your 3-year-old kid's throwing a tantrum about a Barbie yogurt. Really? You're going to throw a tantrum about a Barbie yogurt? You cannot adapt back to who you were.
Totally not connected.
Exactly. When you've seen that extreme, your whole mindset and everything, your person, you change. You're not the same person. And it's about adapting back to what you've experienced into trying to have a relatively normal life.
Paul Sussman is here from the Center for Cosmetic Dentistry. Paul?
Actually, why don't you go on? It's interesting what you were saying. But how did you get involved in this?
Gosh, it's been such a process. I'm actually a qualified architect. I studied architecture after school, and I had my own company for many years. And then my own strength things, which started in 2011 when I discovered my physical strength. I thought everybody could do what I was doing. I didn't know that I was strong. That kind of opened up the completely new door for me. And at more or less just a few years before that, I did a course in counseling and trauma work, and that went on into proper trauma counseling. And that's when I started working with the police on their schedule. So it kind of evolved into that. And then I thought, well, wow, I really like this counseling. I love people. I don't like bricks anymore. We don't build with timber in South Africa. We do bricks and mortar. So I really like people more than I do bricks. so that made me want to study into the field even further. And then as I discovered my physical strengths, the whole sports psychology thing started fascinating me. So that's what made me study into sports psychology, and how do you channel what you've experienced? Because I've been through quite a few traumas myself. How do you channel what you've been through and turn it into something positive?
So is that what happened? You tuned into your emotional strength?
Absolutely. And that's what sports psychology is. It's about taking a trauma. This is how I choose to use sports psychology. It's about taking a trauma or some bad event that's happened to you and using sport to have a positive outcome. So you kind of channel all your emotions into your sport. And the sport that I absolutely love, which is strongwoman, you'll find with World's Strongest Men, and I mean, you've got some of the best athletes from the States who I absolutely adore. Met some of them in Botswana when they were at World's Strongest. You can chat to any of these guys, and they all have something bad that's happened in their past, and they've channeled it into the sport. You just keep putting it back in there. You throw the iron around. You can't throw people around, so you throw the iron around. And the amazing thing is that these big guys are all the smallest hearts. They're all the most gentle giants. So I think
they found a place to focus
absolutely.
the energy.
Yeah. So sorry, I just ramble on.
No,
So I think that to answer your question more specifically, it's been a process. And I would never have guessed. I mean, I said to someone this morning, I would never have guessed this is what I'd be doing today. Because today's actually my 48th birthday. So
Happy birthday.
Today is, it's 8 years ago today that I swam Robben Island, where everything started.
Wow.
On my 40th birthday.
And I just read about that. That is the coolest thing.
Whoever said life begins at 40 knew what they were talking about. Because my life literally changed on my 40th birthday when I swam Robben Island.
Yeah, and you were saying it was freezing, and you were thinking about your kids,
sharks and all kinds
the beach
of
was
things.
far away, and you didn't know. And
Wait a minute, you learned all this stuff with videos, right?
Well, no, I read about her.
I thought you watched videos.
Hero, I told you.
Well, so where'd you find this?
There's no kryptonite, though. On Google. Google Meister. Google Meister.
Hang on, Paul has something. Go ahead, Paul.
So are you working with local schools, or how are you working with people now?
I've only been here for a few weeks now, but we started putting our feelers out to the schools. I'm finding the schools operate very different here, so I'm just kind of trying to find my feet in everything. But we are open to the schools having me speak to the kids, and it's not specifically just about bullying. It's about being emotionally resilient. For that kid who keeps being bullied, how do I not allow this bully in the school to affect me? And then I've also worked with very violent bullies in South Africa, where the South African police would call me in and say, we cannot get through to this kid, and our juvenile system in South Africa is not what it is here. So they would rather try and solve matters, that way. And I've had violent bullies turn around and say, help me, I don't want to be this kid. Because I just ripped their masks off and just say to them, look, I know you have issues at home. Let's just cut to the chase. No one is born to be what you're doing right now. So rip that mask
and I can
off.
pull the plane. So don't mess.
Don't mess with me. But yeah, I'm the most gentle person ever.
So when I read about you, that was you also those kids that you unmask, and they look at you like, "Help me!" You can turn their world upside down, and they go, this is not what I want. And you're like, you need to connect to yourself.
Exactly. And it's about shifting that kid's perspective, and whether it's a kid or an adult, because adults unfortunately stay bullies, some of them, and a lot of adults stay victims. So it's about, with a victim, why are you a victim? Let's get you out of this space. Let's shift your perspective completely.
Yeah, this is a great point to go into, because I think that there's a prevalence of victimology in American culture. Is that unique to this country, or do you find this everywhere?
I find it everywhere. I think there's a general thing worldwide where people are not being taught coping skills of how to get out of a situation.
Amen.
And how to be, the right coping mechanisms after you've been through situations. So they stay in a victim mode. A lot of adults walk around 50, 60 years old from victim of 10 years old. And when they are in any situation that becomes slightly volatile, the 10-year-old then comes out. A lot of people don't understand that it's like when adults are fighting, it's like, gosh, he's like a 12-year-old when he fights. what happened to you when you were 12? Because you go back to the age that you were at, where you literally stuck there in certain levels.
Well, and also in this country, unfortunately, we've reached a point here, and maybe this is international as well, and Liesl is South African, so she knows whereof she speaks. But victimology, victim status confers power. That is kind of a substitute for accomplishment these days.
Absolutely, and it's an attention thing.
Thank you.
It's as long as I can be the victim, I'm getting attention.
Confer status.
Absolutely. So a lot of people who are stuck in a victim space will constantly have excuses. There will never be a responsibility that goes along with it. There's very few adults and children, but I mean, I'd say adults because I think by then you should be able to take some responsibility for your actions. But there's very few adults who can take responsibility and say, you know what, I made a mistake. I need to fix this. How am I going to fix this? And I think also we just, in general, worldwide, with social media and everything, we get so stuck in a rut of being occupied with screens that we don't sit back and have that time and say to myself, where am I? Why am I here? Where do I really want to be? How am I going to get there? There's none of that self-awareness at all anymore.
So speaking of empowerment that you talk about, you're still with it, I'm going to say it wrong, Rebecca Steinkamp Foundation. Mm-hmm. So that's why you empower kids and women. I'm sure anybody, actually. But is that you're still focused on that and helping empower them? And Absolutely. You're not a victim. You're a go-getter.
Exactly.
And without personal responsibility, There is no freedom.
It's about your experience not defining who you are. And there's a lot of people who choose to have an experience define them. Say, well, I've been through this. This is now who I am. Sometimes when I'm sitting in one-on-one counseling with someone and I'll say, well, tell me about who are you? Tell me about yourself. Well, my name is Peter and I'm a diabetic. Wow, is that how you define yourself? But it immediately tells me this guy's got a serious issue right now with being medically not well. So there's a lot of things, just listening to people and that kind of thing. But the victim thing, there's just, as far as I'm concerned, too many victims walking around and too little people saying, I need to take control and recover to the best extent I possibly can and actually make a difference in this world. Live a purpose, live with passion. It's shocking when you ask adults in general, give me 5, just quickly, give me 5 of your passions. And I'm
surprised they can name one.
Exactly. So that I think worldwide, it's not South African, it's not American, it's a global thing as far as I'm concerned. Self-awareness is really... it's not existing anymore.
Jay,
people don't know themselves.
Can I give you one more question because we're running low on time?
Personal question. So a friend of mine friend at work was having trouble, and I said, you need to connect with yourself. And so the most simplest things, I'm guessing. So I like it cold. I like sunny mornings. I like yogurt. I hate yogurt. Sometimes the things you don't like. And as you talk yourself to the simpler things that life is encompassing. So if you go simple, you start saying, yeah, this is who I am. Now you're reconnecting with yourself. Was that good advice?
It was brilliant advice, because what happens when you are traumatized, and I say traumatized in a way of anything out of the ordinary, put it rather that way. You know what happens to an animal when it gets injured? It goes and hides in a cave. You literally need to make your world smaller to be able to cope. If you can see your perimeter and you're safe in that, that's where you're coping, and you choose when you extend that perimeter. So saying to her, make your world smaller again, come back to the simplistic stuff, it's perfect.
As I said, the big stuff is usually a bunch of little stuff put together. Start with the small one. If that little bugger's hard, go to the next little one.
Exactly.
If that's hard, find the and then little by little.
And be gentle with yourself. Don't push yourself too hard.
Because God only made one of you.
Exactly.
And there was a reason for that.
Amazing. You gave her the best advice.
Oh, yeah.
I think you two should partner. Okay, Jay, go along with her on the next presentation. Liesl, it's been fascinating chatting with you, and of course you have a program that you would like people to reach out and employ your services. Tell them how to get in contact with you.
Best way would be either through the website of the company that I'm working with now, which is usa/hope.com, or I'll even give you my phone number. People are welcome to phone or message me. It's 585-537-2456.
Thanks so much, Liesl Schoonraad. How to do?
That's much better than earlier.
I got to practice. Good luck with your program. Thanks so much, and thanks for all the good you do in the community, and welcome to America. We'll be back with more Health Talk on the WYSL stations.